This conference will now be recorded.
I just want to, first of all, welcome everybody to this evening's virtual city council meeting. Today is Wednesday, June 24th, 2020, and I'd like to call this evening's meeting to order. Could all please stand and pledge of allegiance. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could I have the roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Boff.
Here.
Councilmember Stimmel.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Councilmember
Present.
Councilmember Benny.
Present.
Mayor Thorson.
Present. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. If there are no requests for any items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the citizens' public comment. This evening, citizen public comments will be read by the clerk, and he will observe the 3-minute rule. Do we have any comments?
Yes, sir, we do.
The first public comment is from Sean Wright, address 305 West 8th Street. And say, first I'd like to thank the staff, mayor,
for working with Riverside to obtain the new park development.
I'm sorry, Micah?
Yes.
Is there something you can do to improve your audio?
Yes. Is that better?
And try it.
All right.
Micah, you have an echo. You're gonna have to either turn off your computer, turn the mic off on your computer or on your phone.
Sean Wright, 305 West 3rd Street.
There you go.
For June 24th meeting. First, I'd like to thank city staff, mayor, and council for working with ECM Riverside LLC to obtain the new park development along Pacific Highway. Due to development in this area, these improvements are much needed. The plan looks great, and I support the purchase of these lands and improvements. Second, I'd like to thank the staff for generating a safe routes to school application for Pacific Highway. This is an incredibly important project for our community, and I urge council to authorize city staff to submit an application for the 2021 Safe Routes Grant. Unfortunately, though, the proposed trail is shown directly adjacent to the roadway. My hope is for us to add at least 3 feet width for street trees where feasible. That is, in areas outside the constrained retaining wall, in areas that do not require expensive power pole relocation. The presence of street trees has a significantly positive effect on pedestrian safety, and it is my hope that it could be included in any final plans. I understand the concerns due to the proposed new storm pipe, but this shouldn't be an issue with proper design. Lastly, I support the authorization for the STBG grant application for Breezy Creek and 4th Street widening. This project is critical to our city, and we need as much funding as we can get to make the project as pedestrian friendly as possible in such a constrained space. Big thanks to Tony Cooper for spearheading these efforts. I have comments regarding this plan, but I will save them for Tony in later council meetings.
Are there any other comments for this evening?
Yeah, there's one more. Meeting is from Dennis Nutbrock, 1509 Northwest 339th Street, the Center, Washington. I fully support submitting a Safe Routes to School grant application for a sidewalk along Pacific Highway. This sidewalk fills a priority need identified in the 2016 Park, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan for a trail from downtown to the west boundary of the city along Pacific Highway. I strongly encourage the city to consider extending the sidewalk along the frontage of the La Center Pacific LLC property at 34506 Northwest Pacific Highway. This, coupled with the frontage improvements along Riverside Estates, will provide a continuous sidewalk from Highland Terrace and points east to the new city park proposed in Riverside Estates. Without completing this 320-foot section of sidewalk, pedestrians will be forced to leave the sidewalk and walk along the narrow shoulder on Pacific Highway to get to the park. Thank you.
Thank you. Will that conclude our public comment for this evening, Micah?
Yes, we have one more for the public hearing, but that's the end of public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Next is the mayor's report. We have a very full agenda this evening, so I just have a couple quick comments. First of all, I just want to say that my mayor's town hall will be canceled again for the month of July. I hope to resume having my town hall meetings again in August, and I typically have my town halls on the first Wednesday of every month. And I'm hopeful that that will resume in August. And I just want to share with the council that the city offices will be closed on Friday, July 3rd for the 4th of July Independence Day celebration. And I just want to wish everybody a happy and safe 4th of July. That's all I have this evening. Next on the agenda would be the attorney's report. Bronson, do you have anything?
I do, Mayor. As I indicated in an email that I sent to you, Mayor, and council members about 10 days ago, the governor, with the legislature's approval, extended the prohibition on in-person public meetings. So that prohibition is going to remain in effect through July 1. And then we'll just see if there's any further extensions. The practice seems to have been that these prohibitions have been extended within a day or two of their expiration. So we probably won't know till the end of the month if we're going to be looking at another extension on the prohibition on in-person public meetings. But I'll keep you informed as soon as I hear anything. The other thing that I have is that there are still 2 pending appeals stemming from the annexation and the Growth Management Hearing Board's decision, but FutureWise and Friends of Clark County have agreed to dismiss those appeals based on the Court of Appeals ruling that the annexation issue or the urban growth area expansion issues were rendered moot by the annexation that occurred. So those appeals are going to be dismissed any day now. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Bronson. Any questions to the city attorney this evening for council? Okay, hearing none, I will move on. Next on the agenda are council comments. Councilmember Boff.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to commend those who organized the high school seniors parade last weekend. I was able to take that in over in the Southview Heights area. It looked like it moved very well from my vantage point. And the mask on the one car brought a little bit of levity to the parade, and it was very enjoyable. So I just want to say thanks to all who put that parade together. That's all I have tonight.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Stimmel.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
Thanks, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you. Good.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't able to be here for the parade, but I heard it was great. I want to thank everybody that helped put it together, echoing Councilmember Boff's comments. The other is we're coming up on the 4th of July. It's a time that People like to celebrate sometimes too much. Just let's be careful with fireworks. Let's watch out for our neighbors. We don't want to have any accidents or fires. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Strowman?
No comment tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Cerveny?
Nothing to add tonight, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. All right, next we'll go into staff reports. This evening we have Chief Nohr with us, Clark County Fire Rescue. Chief?
Chief,
Excuse me, Chief, you're coming in real soft. Can you turn your volume up, or is there a way for you to improve your mic?
Actually, if I just turn the microphone on, it would
That
be great.
helps. It helps tremendously. Yes, thank you.
Oh, 4 months into it, and I'm still getting used to web meetings here. So, July 4th coming up. We usually put on extra staffing on the 4th of July to have additional units available. We'll be watching the weather, and if we have a dry spell weather, we will have a couple extra units on in the district just to help manage any excessive call volume that might result from that. I just want to let you know that we're still closed. The building's still closed. We can open for groups of 5 or less. Our guys have been doing a really good job on calls out there. They use a lot more protective equipment. And so if you see them out on the streets, they'll be in masks. And if you see them on calls, they got a lot more protective equipment on than they've had in the past. But we continue to monitor and treat every patient as a COVID patient until proven otherwise. Construction continues to be strong throughout the district, so our fire inspectors are busy with that. One of the things I wanted to bring up is going to be on the ballot in August is an annexation. So the city or the district serves 3 cities. We serve La Center, Ridgefield, and Woodland. La Center and Ridgefield are already annexed into the district. The city of Woodland, it'll be on the ballot for them to annex in if they'd like. And all of the citizens of La Center are voters of the district, so they will see that on their ballot. There's information on our website about that. If you start seeing information about that, feel free to call me and let me know or ask me some questions about it. But it's simply an administrative issue. It does not change the cost to any of the taxpayers in CCFR or in Woodland. In fact, the city of Woodland agreed to lower their tax rate by the district's tax rate, so that it's cost neutral to the citizens there. Town hall, we're coming up in July, on July 14th and the 28th to talk about it. So if anybody wants to attend those, they're attend. If you start seeing information out there and you have any questions, or if any citizens have questions, please refer them to me.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Chief Nohr this evening from the council? Okay, so next on the agenda will be a staff report from our community development department, and Mr. Jeff Swanson will be presenting. Jeff?
Hello, Mayor, Council. Good evening. Micah, do we have the ability to either bring the report up or allow me to share my screen? All right, and if you could just zoom in on that spreadsheet. I'll give a few project updates. Everyone see that? Okay, so just want to highlight a couple of things. Project number 8 is Minute Management. And the latest development on that is that they had a hearing on May 26th before the hearings examiner. And the record was left open into June in case there were any comments or replies to any comments received. The record's been closed and the proposal has been approved by the hearings examiner. Next one is number 14 at Highland Terrace. It's a single family subdivision on the northwest end of town. And the developer is looking to extend their development agreement. And so this would likely come before the council in August. They're looking at needing some additional time on their plat, so extending the expiration of the plat in order to complete their financing and begin construction of the civil improvements. Number 15 is the Holly subdivision. Update on that one is that 9 single-family residential plans have been approved. Number 16, Kay's Place. Nutter Construction is going to begin work on the civil improvements for phases 2 and 3 of that subdivision. Number 17, Riverside Estates. For the phase 2 engineering, that's been approved. A pre-construction meeting was held with the city, and so they'll be proceeding with building phase 2 improvements here soon. 33 building plans have been approved. There are 6 homes which have been given occupancy. This is in phase 1 of the development. And of course, this evening you have before you an amendment to the development agreement, which we'll get into here in a few minutes. Other than that, project number 22, this is the Belika Townhomes. Their application was deemed incomplete by the city's planner on June 15th. And the Shoreline Master Program, just an update on that. Ethan Spoo, our contract planner, will be working with the Planning Commission at their July meeting. I think we anticipate holding a July meeting of some sort. And they'll be talking about the Shoreline Master Program. Are there any questions about the community development report?
Yes, Jeff, Doug here. I do have a question. Question is for on number 20, Country Hills Estates. What is the status of that project?
So that project, the last contact that we had was in March when they met, I believe, with the city's planner and city attorney to discuss what their options are, platting the development versus a condominium revision. And I don't believe that we have heard anything else from them since that meeting. So they're deliberating amongst themselves on what their options are at this point, I believe.
Okay. Okay. When you say they had a meeting, was that with Ethan? Was in that?
Yeah, I believe that was with Ethan and with Bronson.
Yeah. Oh, with Bronson too. Okay.
Yeah, I
thank you.
can help you out.
Tony was also involved in that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So just to have a little bit of information, we did meet with the Country Hills Estate and their attorney, explained the limitation on some of their options in terms of trying to subdivide the property because they would need to bring some of the infrastructure up to current code requirements. And so with that understanding, they were going to meet with their attorney and instead explore ways to amend their condominium agreement documents to make their lots sellable without going through a subdivision process.
Okay. So it sounds like it's rather
and that's where it's
complicated yet.
It is. You know, the roads, the sidewalks are nowhere near what would be required if you were going to subdivide the property. And so that was going to make trying to subdivide the property very expensive. And so the attorney representing Country Hills advised them that probably a more feasible way would be to go forward with amending their private condominium agreements and documents.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Jeff, this is Randy. Number 9 on Schwartz. What's the status of that?
So the last contact we had with them, I believe, was in May. May or maybe April. And the application, they applied for a variance on some design requirements, but that was deemed incomplete by the city's planner. And so we're awaiting a resubmittal from the applicant before we can do anything further with it.
It appears somebody's living there in a travel trailer.
Yeah, I'm not.
Is that the property
I know
owner?
there's a mobile home on the property and maybe another structure or two, but I'm not real familiar with what the situation.
No, there's a travel trailer that appeared there probably about a month ago.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's the owner or a squatter or what. So
I can help with.
Curious.
Yeah, I can help with this one a little bit. So the most recent update to this is that the city received some plans from the property owner this week. You know, since this report was put together, so we're going to start taking a look at those and figure out if they meet the variance requirements or not.
Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff? Okay, very good. Thank you, Jeff. The next staff report we have, or the final staff report we have this evening, is the finance staff report, and the acting finance manager, Micah Elliott, will be presenting that to the council.
Good evening, council. So, the finance staff report for June. We have our annual report that was submitted on June 17th, 2020. All local governments are required to submit their annual report each year on May 31st, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this was extended to June 17th. Finance has been working closely with Teresa Johnson's firm to finalize a report, and that was certified and submitted on June 17th. I sent out a PDF of that report to council on Monday, so you should all have that report. Did anybody have any questions on that report?
No, it's a good read. I liked it.
Yeah, it's great nighttime literature to help you go to sleep at night. Okay, next, internal controls. So the city's policies and procedures are due for revision, and we've started the process of updating and reviewing those documents to ensure they're updated with the best practices. Primarily, the first one that we attacked was our standard operating procedure for utility billing. We have some other SOPs that will be addressed, including accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash receipting, and payroll processes. We've got financial policies that are also going to be reviewed and looked at for revision, including cost allocation plans, debt management, fund balance reserves, and investments. So all those policies are being looked at to make sure that they're in compliance with best practices. One set of internal controls that the city utilizes to protect their assets are segregation of duties between the individuals that are responsible for managing your general ledger accounts and the person that's responsible for managing the banking and investment accounts. Since the previous finance manager left in April, I've had to assume the duties of both of those positions rather than just the GL accounts. And so to compensate for that weakness, we've instituted a secondary review where all the transactions that I'm performing are being reviewed by Teresa Johnson's CPA firm. This is just a compensating control to help protect and make sure that I'm not running away with the city's money. Some highlights on revenues and expenses. We've got a detailed second quarter financial report that Paul Lewis is going to be presenting here in July. And so I'm just going to highlight a few things that have happened in April and May since we didn't have an April since we didn't have a lot of the information for April. The county treasurer extended their deadline for individual property taxpayers from April all the way through to June 3rd. So taking this into account, we're seeing that property taxes have experienced a year-over-year decline of about 12% So for reference, April 2020 property tax collections were about 180,000 this year. Last year they were 205,000. So what we're expecting to see is a deferral of that revenue that we would typically see because of the April deadline being carried forward. And we see the property tax revenues in arrears because the county collects it first and then they remit it to us. So I would expect to see that revenue catch up throughout June and July. Likewise, sales tax, those are remitted to local governments 2 months after the state collects them. So we haven't really seen much of the impact of COVID-19 on our sales taxes because the taxes we're seeing in April and May are from February and March. So we're expecting to also notice and experience a decline in our sales tax revenues that will hit us here in June and July. The card rooms are still on the deferment of tax payments, and since the revenues haven't really changed, they haven't submitted anything for March, April, or May. We emitted the standard card room report for our tax revenues this week. Any questions?
Yeah, hi, Micah. Doug here. Good report, by the way. And I have a question regarding the audit report that did make for some interesting reading.
Yeah.
But I noticed that there were like about $34,000 in NSF checks on that. I'm just curious, was that many small checks or was it 2 or 3 large ones? I'm just kind of curious to see $34,000 on NSF.
Yeah, so that report is taking into account there was a very significant NSF check from one of the developers that was about $27,000. They did turn around and pay that like the next day, but because it was already an NSF check that hit our accounts, it shows up as an NSF, so we account for it and show it. The remaining 13,000 or so is all from your standard utility bill NSFs that come in month over month.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Micah, this is Randy. I'm looking at Alicia Topper's email she sent out Sunday. Says, pleased to report that as of Friday, first half property taxes are in line with 2019. Countywide, we've collected 53.532% of 2020. So hopefully we'll see we won't see a big hit.
No, and like I said, I don't really expect to see a huge decline in property tax revenues. What I expect to see is a deferment rather, because typically we see the largest amount of our property taxes coming in the month of April and October, because those are the property tax deadlines. The rest of the payments throughout the year are small. But I expect to see this 12% decline in April actually get deferred and spread out over the next few months after that. But I don't expect to see a true decline, just a deferment of when those revenues come into the city.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I had.
Very good. Any other questions for Micah this evening from the council? Okay, Micah, thank you. So next on the agenda are ordinances, resolutions, and public hearings. Item 1.8.1 on this evening's agenda is for consideration of the First Amendment to the Riverside Estates Subdivision Development Agreement. We'll first have a presentation from staff, then we'll have comments from the applicant, ECM LLC. Next, we will have comments from the public, followed by any replies or comments from the applicant and staff. Before the staff presentations, I will ask members of the council if they have had any discussions of this matter outside of this evening's hearing. So I think I'll just go through the Councilmember Boff.
No, I have not.
Councilmember Stimmel.
I have not.
Councilmember Williams.
No, I have not, Mayor.
Councilmember Strobin.
Nope.
And Councilmember Cerveny.
No, I have not, Mayor.
Very good. Okay, thank you. With that, Jeff Swanson will be making the staff presentation this evening. You could begin.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Thornton and Council. Micah, can you give me the ability to share my screen?
You should have that ability. Is it not an option on share screen?
So to share your screen, ask the organizer to make you presenter.
1 second. Okay, you're now a presenter.
Okay. All right, and I will just mess with this a little bit here. And what I want you to see are the exhibits. So can you all see this exhibit of Riverside Estates? What you should have before you here is a exhibit of the entirety of the Riverside Estates development. So hopefully you can all see that. I'll highlight a couple of things as I go through the staff report here. So before I begin, for the record, I'm Jeff Swanson, Community and Economic Development Consultant on behalf of the city. So there are two related items before you for consideration this evening. The first is a resolution to amend the development agreement for Riverside Estates, and the second is a purchase and sale agreement to acquire the Riverside Estates Phase 4 Park property. Just a little bit of background on these two items. Last July, through council action, the city entered into a development agreement for Riverside Estates specifying 3 phases of development, 2 single-family phases and 1 multifamily. A 4th phase consisting entirely of park area had not yet been negotiated. In the intervening time, the developer and city staff have been discussing possibilities for that 4th phase park area and are now prepared to bring this amendment to the development agreement forward for council consideration. The amendment consists of 3 main areas of change. The first is the development of the park and related requirements and the financial details for that aspect of the development agreement. The second is relocation of the trail previously specified in the agreement. And the third is city review and approval of design standards and CC&Rs for phase 1 of the development. And I'll go through each of these in a little bit more detail. With respect to the first change, the park area known as phase 4, which are tracks E and M of the plat, and I'll show you tract E is here, if you can see my cursor moving over it. The sewer pump station is here, Larson Drive is here, so this is tract E, which was previously designated as a phase 1 and phase 2 park. And this area over here, parts of it, were designated as parks and open space area as well. So these had previously been designated as parks and open space to satisfy the requirements for just phases 1 and 2. Phase 3, which is the multifamily piece that my cursor is circling over up here, they were likewise going to be required to satisfy public parks and open space requirements within that respective phase of development. The developer proposed consolidating and satisfying all public parks and open space requirements using the entirety of this phase 4 piece, which is a 5.19 acre area. After review of code requirements and vetting this concept, staff finds that this approach better satisfies public interests in parks and open space than by the previously approved dispersed non-contiguous areas. Tracks E and M, those former park spaces in phases 1 and 2, will be maintained by the homeowners association as passive open space. The developer of phase 3, the multifamily development, will likewise construct open space and recreational amenities within their phase as they have planned to do. However, those improvements will be for private use only. They will not be public improvements. The developer is to complete the phase 4 park improvements by July 1st, 2021, and they are to secure the value of those improvements at 125% of the construction value using a bond or irrevocable letter of credit as some kind of securitization. The city proposes purchasing the property for $175,000, which is the mean value of two appraisals that were conducted, valuing the land at $140,000 and $210,000 respectively. Funds for this purchase are already being collected by the city through park impact fees, as the Parks Capital Improvement Plan already contemplates acquisition of a city park property in this area of the city. The budgetary impact then will be a reduction in fund balance of the impact fees fund by the amount of the acquisition. And likewise, because this park is included in the park CIP, the developer is entitled to park impact fee credits for the value of the improvements. The park design requires review by the city and will require a critical areas variance due to the impact on the wetland buffer areas, which happen to be under the city's jurisdictional authority. And that process will be a type 3 process before the city's hearings examiner. The second change made to the development agreement by the amendment concerns the location of a trail. The trail was originally proposed for the western boundary of the site, but because of the presence of wetland and buffer areas, must be relocated to the northern boundary of phase 3, and the amendment simply memorializes this change. The third change concerns the requirement for the developer or their successors to submit design standards and CC&Rs for city review to be recorded with the plat for phase 1. With the approval and recording of this amendment to the development agreement, those design standards and CC&Rs for phase 1 will be recorded as part of the final plat approval. All other aspects of the development agreement not altered by this amendment remain in full force and effect. The staff recommendation before you is, following conduct of the public hearing, staff recommends adoption of the resolution amending the Riverside Estates development agreement. Staff then recommends approval of the real estate purchase and sale agreement for the Riverside Phase 4 park property, and language for these two motions has been provided for you by the city attorney. And Bronson and Ethan are on the line, and do you two have anything to add?
Not at this point, Jeff. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Ethan. Bronson?
Jeff, I will just briefly. I'm having a little trouble. There we go. Okay. So one, I think from the city standpoint, a concern or something that we need to be comfortable with is when and for sure will the park be built. And so two things in the amendment of the development agreement in that regard. One is that it calls for the park to be built by July 1, 2021. And then on the assurance that the park will be built, as Jeff indicated, there is the requirement of a performance bond in the amount of 125% of the construction costs of the park, or an acceptable letter of credit. But there's also a provision in the amendment that says that if the park is not completed by July 1 of next year, the city will stop issuing certificates of occupancy for any residential unit within phases 1, 2, or 3. So that is sort of a belt and suspenders security to the city that this park will be completed.
Okay, Bronson, thank you for that. Does the council have any questions for staff at this juncture?
Mayor, this is Randy. And I guess it's to Jeff and maybe Bronson. I'm not understanding the math. We're paying $175,000 for this park based on an appraised value. Okay, I got that. The builder has to input park impact fees. What's the money flow here? It's just I'm not understanding it completely.
So the money flow, really the only check that the city is going to write from its own funds is for the acquisition of the land. The rest of the cash flow for the project is simply us issuing park impact fee credits for the remaining residential units to be constructed and refunding park impact fees that have been paid already for phase one construction, the units in phase one that have received permits.
So help me out if I'm understanding this correctly. The builder with each parcel has a park impact fee amount he has to pay. We collect that, throw that in the fifth bucket, and then we have to pay for the builder to build the park for us. Is that how it's working out of that same bucket?
Not exactly. So the builder, the developer, builds the park and dedicates the park and the improvements to the city's ownership. And for that, they are basically exempted from paying the park impact fees.
Okay. So why is where's the 175,000 go?
The 175,000 is in addition. So in terms of total value that the city is bringing to this transaction, it's 175,000 of our own dollars from collection of park impact fees to purchase the land, and then the remaining amount is whatever park impact fees are generated by phases 1, 2, and 3 of the development. So a little interesting aspect of this is the city's current parks capital improvement program was updated prior to the Riverside Estates development being annexed into the city. And so in terms of park impact fees that were relied upon for that capital improvement plan, those that are generated by Riverside Estates were not contemplated as part of that amount because Riverside Estates wasn't part of the city at that time. So what was contemplated was that the city would acquire a park property in this area of the city, and I believe $264,000 has been allocated in the plan for that purpose. So for less than that amount, you're buying the land, and for park impact fees that you weren't counting on getting when you devised the plan, the developer is going to construct a park and dedicate it.
Before the change, real quick, Jeff, this is Tom. Before the change of this, when they were going to be developing parks in the different subs or the different plats there, were we going to be paying for those as well? Were we going to be shelling out $175,000 for those parks, or is this something new?
This is a different approach. So what they were proposing before were smaller areas that satisfied code requirements for, like pocket parks that have to be developed as part of residential subdivisions. And they would pay on top of that park impact fees.
Will this
so we didn't plan on, oh, I'm sorry, Doug, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So this is all in addition now to us, instead of going the original route that costed us no money, now we're talking about spending another $175,000 that we didn't budget for. Am I correct in what saying or no?
What you have budgeted for in your parks capital improvement plan is $264,000 to acquire a parks property in this area of the city. So this satisfies that requirement, and the transaction amount is less than that $264,000. It's $175,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in which bucket does this actually come out of then in our accounts?
It comes out of your impact fees fund. So it's restricted fund.
Jeff, this is Randy. So how much park impact fees did the developer pay for Riverside Estates?
Well, they pay as they come in and pull permits. And, but the total amount that the development is projected to generate over the 3 phases of development is close to $900,000.
And park impact fees?
Yes.
Okay, so we're paying $175,000 out of that bucket for the land for them to finish the park. Do I have that correct?
So they get credit for the impact fees, and the city is paying 175 out of its impact fee fund balance to acquire the land.
Oh, excuse me,
You say they
Council.
get a credit out of the impact fees. Okay, maybe this is just fuzzy math to me, but I'm not getting this. It seems like there's something moving around too much.
Well, what it is they're liable for every residential unit to pay a park impact fee.
I got that.
Unless they construct a park that's in the capital facilities plan, and then they're entitled to a credit. So instead of paying that park impact fee, they would get credited that for the public improvement that they made. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got that. So what is the value, the estimated value of this park?
Estimated value of the park, I believe it exceeds that total amount. I believe it's 1.3 or 1.4 million. I think, I don't know if Tony's on the call tonight, but
Yeah, that's right.
He's received an engineer's estimate.
Okay, so the value of the park is going to exceed the park impact fee, so we got to throw in 175 to make it work.
And they have skin in the game as well. The
Okay.
delta between the delta between the impact fee credits, what we're paying for the land, and the amount to construct the park is on them.
Okay. I didn't realize the park cost more than the impact fees. That's the part that was missing.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is Ethan. I just wanted to add that in response to a question from Councilmember Strobin, that in terms of the difference between what had previously been planned in Riverside versus this Phase 4 park, you're essentially getting a publicly dedicated park versus private open spaces in within the subdivision. So a publicly dedicated park on your parks plan versus private open spaces. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you, Ethan. Thanks,
Well,
Joe.
I think also bears mentioning that this park is significantly larger than the 2 small pocket parks that were originally planned. And it is a park that is within our capital facilities plan. And that's why the developer is entitled to park impact fee credits for the cost of construction of the park. So it's a very different facility than what was shown in the original development agreement. Yes, we're paying $175,000 for the real property, and under our code, the developer is entitled to park impact fee credits for the cost of construction of the park. But the agreement says that the amount of credits that the developer is to receive cannot exceed the cost of that construction.
And do we have an estimate of what that, this is Doug, do we have an estimate of what that cost would be? Because the drawings that I'm looking at are very, very detailed, and they should know what that cost would be.
We do. It's the engineers estimated the cost to be 1.1 million. So it's more than the impact fee credits that will be available.
many units need to be sold over there for us to collect fees to get this thing to balance out?
But I think that's another aspect of this that we should probably make clear is that the credits that'll be issued are dependent on when the park impact fees are generated. So the city is not going to write a check for the amount of the total park impact fees when they build the park. They'll be entitled to those credits as they build unit by unit.
In addition, there's, this is Ethan again, in addition, there's some milestones in the development agreement tied to certain phases of the park improvement. And so the park impact fees wouldn't be refunded or the credits would not be given until those milestones are met and the park development reaches certain phases.
Okay. Thank you. I think we'll move on with the presentation here. We'll hear from the applicant. Is there someone here on behalf of ECM? Present. And if you could give us your name and affiliation with ECM.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Peter Etro with ECM.
Okay, Peter, in your position?
President, owner.
Okay, thank you. You have a presentation for the council?
I do not. I'm here to support Jeff's presentation.
Okay.
I can answer any questions that you guys may have.
This is John. I have a question. I'm not quite sure who it should go to. You kind of mentioned the path, the walking trail changing earlier, Mayor, and I'm not sure I grasped all of that. I see a trail coming on the Pacific Highway. I'm curious, will this trail just connect to the sidewalk there and go along Pacific, or is it meant to cross and connect eventually to the Heritage Trail? I think it's called the Heritage Trail.
So, John, what you might be seeing there is there's a path that goes around the property on the west side from Pacific Highway, and there's also an access break for vehicles and a drive down to a parking area. And maybe I should share my screen again just to bring that up here. Okay, so there's this path that goes around.
Can you zoom it up a little bit?
Yeah. The Pacific Highway is here. This is the access break for vehicles. There's parking area down here. And then there is a path that goes around here. So that's part of the park. The development agreement, I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to, but there's a change in the alignment of a previously proposed trail. Previously, there was going to be a trail on this western boundary, but there are these wetland and buffer areas. And so instead, there's going to be a trail constructed along the northern periphery of the third phase of development to provide better access from this part of the development to the park.
Okay. I was curious what would be done about kids wanting to cross that street there, and if it would be part of this development, if it would be considered. Eventually, there will be kids coming across that street right there where that walkway is. Is that something we'll wait to fix later down the road when it becomes more of an issue?
Are we talking here at Pacific Highway?
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually, so across the road is Highland Terrace is the proposed development there. And so the half street improvements on the other side will be addressed when that development comes in.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's, right now it's 7:27. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing portion of this evening's presentation. So if there's on listening to the meeting this evening, if they would like to have a public comment, if you could please give us your name and address, and if you limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I really don't have a control here to see who's calling in or wants to comment. So if multiple people begin talking all at once, if you could just have a little patience and please try to go one at a time.
Mayor, we do have one that was submitted by email.
Go ahead, Micah.
Okay, so the first one is from Dennis Nutbrock, 1509 Northwest 339th Street. It says, I fully support the proposed city park and Riverside estate development. It fills a priority need identified in the 2016 Park Recreation and Open Space Master Plan for a city park on the west side of town. With development agreements, I believe it is imperative that the city be fully transparent in identifying which city codes are being waived or ignored. With the subject development agreement, I believe there are 3 areas where transparency is lacking. First, neither the development agreement nor city staff report addresses whether the proposed park meets the park acreage requirements of LCMC 18-147-030-1. Second, the proposed park facility amenities do not meet the requirements of LCMC 18-147-030-1B7. This section does allow the review authority to amend these requirements if the proposed facilities and amenities meet the intent of the chapter in the parks plan. The issue is the city does not explain how the proposed amenities meet the intent of LMC 18-147 in the parks plan. Third, the development agreement specifies the park must be completed by July 1st, 2021. This violates LMC 18-147-032, which requires the park to be completed prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for the 25th dwelling unit. With over 25 homes already under construction, there will certainly be more than 25 homes ready for occupancy by July 1, 2021. Again, the city is waiving code requirements through a development agreement. The city must be transparent with the citizens and the city council. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Micah. Is there anyone that's called in this evening that would like to comment on this project? So, not hearing anyone trying to make a comment, I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:31. And are there any advice from staff regarding the public comments?
This is Ethan. I can jump in and talk a little bit about the park acreage, and Jeff and Bronson may want to also talk a little bit about it. I believe Tony's on the line, and we've discussed the park acreage with him. The entirety of the parcel is over 5 acres, and the area of park improvements is about 1.5 acres. And so there is a requirement in the Parks Code 18-147 that requires that there be 0.25 acres of park provided for every 35 units within a development above the 35 unit threshold. So in this case, that results in a requirement for the Riverside development to provide, normally to provide 2 acres of park. And so if you look at the Parks Code, it does not say exactly what gets included in that acreage. So wetlands and buffers, as well as park improvements themselves can be included in that. And so if you look at all of the wetland and the buffer, as well as the park improvements, you have 3.35 acres, which exceeds the amount that the developer would be required to provide. So I think that probably answers the acreage requirement, but let me know if there's any further questions on that. In terms of occupancy, there is an occupancy provision in the development agreement, and Jeff referenced it in his presentation. So if the park is not complete by July 1st of 2021, then the city can stop issuing occupancy permits. So the city's code allows development agreements to waive code requirements, and so that's the specific waiver of that requirement, and is stated in the development agreement. There was another issue brought up by Dennis in terms of explaining how the park meets the intent of the parks plan and the code, and I believe Jeff covered some of this in his presentation, but this, in terms of what the city's getting here, we've highlighted some of this before. It's a public park versus private open spaces within the development. The parks code strongly favors one contiguous space versus multiple park spaces. So this, this would meet that intent pretty specifically, and staff feels is a better is better than what would have been provided. So I don't know if Jeff and Bronson want to jump in on any of those, or if Tony does, but hopefully those answer the questions.
I don't have anything to add to what you said, Ethan.
Ethan, this is Doug. I'm sorry, Tom. Hey, I've got a question. When I look at the improved area that's being presented, is this greater or less or same than what was planned for the original development agreement, or was the park even designed at that level yet? Since phase 4 being phase 4, was there even an original plan for the park?
There was not a plan at that time, so this is a relatively recent design that's been put forward by the applicant and agreed to with the city within the last couple of months. And so when those original open spaces within phases 1, 2, and 3 were envisioned, this parks plan was not part of the equation at that point.
Thank you.
Any other comments by staff?
This is Tony. I just want to add about the access to the park. There is a connection point that's shown here for that trail to All Pacific Highway, but the connection to the south, which is adjacent to phase 3, the apartment complex, will connect to the interior streets and all the sidewalks there. So that sidewalk continues, I guess it's east, and it will connect to all the interior sidewalks and the streets, and eventually it gets to Larson Road, which there will be improvements to Larson Road and a sidewalk along there. So it'll actually connect all the sidewalks along the interior Riverside. And then at some point, once Highland Terrace is built, there will be a handicap ramp and ramps there. And, there will be access to both developments there. They will have to cross the street, but at that point, there may be some need for a crosswalk. And then if a path is extended along Pacific Highway south, there will be a connection point to the city. So there will be a grid of connections to this park that can be that pedestrians can walk to, but it will take some time to do that.
Thank you, Tony.
So do we know what the net cost will be to the city by the time we factor in $175,000 plus then the issuance of credits? What's the bottom line?
Well, in terms of cash out from the city, it's just the $175,000. The park impact fees that'll be credited is an amount just a little bit shy of $900,000. So
okay,
you're talking a little over $1 million in total value. And I think by the time this thing is constructed, the developer themselves have nearly $900,000 in the value of the land itself, what they paid to acquire it. The construction of the improvements, the planning, engineering, the wetland credits that they need to acquire, that's several $100,000 more. So they're in it a substantial amount to deliver the park, and the city really has very little out in terms of cash.
Okay.
Real quick there. Now I'm confused, Jeff. This is Tom, because Randy, I believe, asked a value of this park after it was completed, and you guys said like 1.1 million. So can you clarify what you just said to Doug? Because now that's kind of confusing, because you're talking about $175,000 out and then $900,000 in credits. So now we're 25,000 short of 1.1 million.
The value of construction alone. Sorry, go ahead, Bronson.
Well, I was going to say the same thing you were saying, Jeff. 1.1 million is the cost to construct the physical improvements to the property. It is not the value of the park. I mean, the 175,000 is what we're paying for the real property. But in terms of the value of the park, you've got to take the 175,000 plus the cost to construct it. So that's where we said combined, they're probably about 1.3 million. What the city's, that's the value. The city's paying 175,000 in cash, and then it's issuing impact fee credits, which are not cash, they're credits, and the developer can then take those credits and sell them to developers of residential units. So I don't know, there could be a shortfall in terms of the developer may not receive as many credits as it's going to cost them to construct the park, but that shortfall lands on the developer, not the city.
Okay, thank you, Bronson.
So any other comments from staff, the developer?
Doug here, one more, just a comment. One thing I do like is that we're talking about maintaining one park in 3 areas, and there's got to be some efficiencies picked up there for our public works guys, going over and mowing one large lawn rather than one large and 2 small ones. It seems to me it would be a lot more efficient for the parks guys.
Well, it also provides a park facility for the west side that we have not paid attention to for many, many years. And with the continuing growth, I think it will also help reduce traffic in terms of going to the main park to some extent over time, and provide a great facility for those living in that area.
Yeah, I agree with you, Liz.
Okay.
I'd like to highlight one thing if I could.
And who's
This is
speaking?
Luke this is Luke Sassy. I'm one of the owners of the multifamily piece, the Phase 3 development. So we have a vested interest in getting this park completed due to code requirements that would make our amenities open to the public. So we plan on constructing our amenities to reduce our impact regardless. And then the city will also get a large park, but the two Phase 1 open spaces will still be maintained as open spaces. So the city's actually getting, instead of 2 little parks down below and our apartment piece, they're getting four different pieces of park and open space. Granted that our piece will only be available to the tenants of our property, but it'll reduce the impact on the other facilities regardless.
Thank you for that. Okay, any other questions for staff, the applicant, before I just turn it back over to council for your final discussion?
I'd like to thank all of the staff for their extensive work on the project. And I know based on the length of time and the depth involved, it took quite a bit of investment and hours. So thank you for that.
I just have a procedural question here for Bronson. So we have basically 2 motions this evening that the council is contemplating. So if council elects to make a motion, it would be a motion for the resolution and then one for the real estate purchase and sale agreement. Is that correct, Bronson?
That's correct, Mayor.
Any other discussion?
Yes, that's correct.
Is there any other discussions amongst the council members concerning this park?
Mayor, I move to vote to approve the Riverside Development Agreement Amendment number 1 as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution as presented this evening. Clerk, could I get a roll call vote on that motion, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Boff,
Yes.
Councilmember Stimmel,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobin,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveni.
Yes.
Motion carries.
The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you, Council. We also have a second motion that's available this evening.
Mayor, I'd like to move that the City Council approve the real estate purchase and sale agreement of Riverside Phase 4 Park property and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement and all related documents upon satisfaction of the conditions of the resolution.
Second.
It's been first and seconded for the mayor to approve the real estate purchase and sale agreement, Riverside Phase 4 Park property, and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement and all related documents upon satisfaction of the conditions of the resolution. Again, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Boff,
Yes.
Councilmember Stimmel,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobin,
Yes.
and Councilmember Cerveni.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Council. And I'd also like to thank the staff and the applicant, the applicants, engineers, and all the people that have worked so diligently and hard to get this all put together. It truly will be a big improvement for the city, and I was happy to see it move forward. Thank you. Next on the agenda under new business is the Stone Creek Drive reconstruction. And Mr. Tony Cooper will be presenting that this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council, this is Tony Cooper, City Level Center. And this staff report is to authorize the award of the 2020 Stone Creek Drive reconstruction project to the low bidder. So in 2020, city staff prepared plans and for reconstruction of Stone Creek Drive. The cost estimate prepared by the city previously was $580,000, which was established as the budget. On May 6th, the project was advertised in the Columbian, and the plans and contract were posted on city website for contractors to download. On June 1st, bids were opened and 5 bids were received. Catworks LLC was the low bidder for a base bid in the amount of $370,000. And then there was an alternate bid as well as that base bid, and their bid was $101,210. So the total cost of the base bid plus the alternate bid is $471,576 and some change. And so the base bid, just to let you know, the base bid included reconstruction of the street with an installation of subsurface drainage piping to drain some of the groundwater that's popping up out of there now, and replacement of some of the curb that's damaged currently. Currently, there's no curb and gutter along Stone Creek, so the alternate bid was to place curb and gutter along that length. Staff recommends that the base bid with the alternate be awarded, and there's a couple reasons why. One is it's a better product in the end with the curb and gutter, and secondly, once the contractor opens up and digs the asphalt and base down and installs some of the subsurface drainage piping, and there may be a little bit of over excavation with ballast, that existing curb may be really hard to hold in place or to use. So it might be that the curb might not be retained once they start excavating this. So I would recommend that we go with the alternate bid with that for the total bid and alternate price. So the contractor anticipates the project starting in the middle of July and completed in mid-September, and that falls within the amount of working days they have for the contract. So the total budget recommended to be awarded by council is $471,576. And I have, I don't know if you can scan down, Micah, but I have the bid tab there, and it shows all the bidders. It's kind of hard to read it, but you can see that Catworks LLC was the low bidder. And the bid ranged from $471,000 all the way to $618,000. So the bids seem really reasonable for the work that's being done. Are there any questions?
Council, any questions or comments on the reconstruction project for Tony?
No.
Good job and taking care of it there, Tony, at the price you came in on. My only concern is if we go always lowest bidder, is this where we're going to get the quality we actually need?
Yes. Well, they're a reputable contractor. I've heard of them before. They've done a lot of work around, and so, unfortunately, we have to go with the low bidder. That's required per law for public entities to go with low bidders, and there's no reason why we would believe that they wouldn't do a good job. They bid it per the contract, and they know what's involved, so they're going to be held to the contract.
Thanks, Tony.
Mayor, I move that we award the contract to Catworks. I'm sorry, I can't see it. It's not visible, but I move that we award the contract for Stone Creek reconstruction to Catworks for $471,000 and change.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the bid to Catworks in the amount of $471,576.32. Clerk, could I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Boff,
Yes.
Councilmember Stimmel,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobin,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny,
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Good job, Tony. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next report that I have is the to authorize staff to submit a grant application for Safe Routes to School for Pacific Highway Trail. So on May 5th, WashDOT announced a call for projects for the Safe Routes to School grant for the 2021 to 2023 biennium. The Safe Routes to School, the program itself is there to try to establish these certain criteria, and the criteria are to eliminate traffic crashes involving children walking or biking to school, build connected networks of pedestrian and bicycle facilities for children within 2 miles of a school, and increase the number of children who can and do walk to or bike to school safely. So with the recent development of Riverside Estates, and which includes the eventual 180 homes with phase 1 and phase 2, and then another 144 units with the apartment complex in phase 3 in the next couple of years, and that has quite a bit of homes. And then there's also Highland Terrace on the north side of Pacific Highway that's going to add another 95 homes in the future. So currently there is no sidewalk or path for pedestrians and bicycles to travel safely along Riverside, from Riverside to the center schools. KWRL, when Riverside was first being developed, they were contacted about how they would transport kids to the schools, and their answer was they would bus them all in, which is what they currently do along Pacific Highway right now. But in order to provide safe transportation for students walking to school and an alternate travel to the center schools, adhering to the city-adopted Complete Streets Ordinance, the city can apply for a Safe Routes to School grant for pedestrians on Pacific Highway for the future Highland Terrace as well. And the length of the corridor, the path would be around 1,800 lineal feet from Riverside to K subdivision. Now, K subdivision is not improved right now along Pacific Highway, but they are planning to improve, make Cap Street improvements. So this connection that I have proposed in the grant will connect to the sidewalk that will be future sidewalk in K subdivision. So the length of travel from Riverside to the middle school, elementary school is 1.3 miles, and to the high school it's 1.6 miles, which is within that 2-mile range that is a requirement of Safe Routes. The city's Park and Recreation and Open Space and Master Plan, this trail is in the master plan, and the Planning Commission has verbalized their need and the need for the city to have a trail along this corridor. Staff has prepared a cost estimate for constructing a 6-foot wide pedestrian path along this corridor that will cost around $540,000. Now, the cost includes the paved path with a raised curb, so it's elevated above the roadway. And because the path would be constructed along the edge of the road, a storm system would have to be in place to replace the existing drainage ditch. And the portion that crosses the guardrail and Bowling Creek likely would have to have some kind of retaining wall to install the path along there. Now, this is all just preliminary design right now, and if the city got the grant, there would have to be surveying and to determine exactly how this would work. But that's the plan right now. The city has contacted the school district, and the school district is in support of the application, and they said they would write a letter of support. And currently, in this grant there is no match requirement, so there's nothing the city would have to contribute, but there would be some contribution by staff and consultants for preparation of the plans, and then also critical areas review and surveying, and probably some other type of technical review. So there will be some city match, but it'll be staff and consultant cost. So really, there's no impact to the city in the end. So I guess are there any questions about the application?
Tony, I have a question. Historically, on the grant procedures, have applications that have some type of level of matching funds included ranked higher?
Yes. Yes, they do, and that's said in here. Yes.
What is the average percentage or amount that's usually used for those grants?
You know, I'm not familiar with the Safe Routes to Schools grants. I don't know what the average is. I just know that there is some point value, and I could find out what that is for a match. But you know, anything would help to get points. But at this point, it's hard to know exactly what that would be, because the cost is really preliminary right now until we get an application in, and then we can find out what the real cost is. But we have to kind of show some preliminary design for that. So I could not tell you what the average match would be. I could probably find out from WashDOT what they usually see.
I'd like to see us really show the city's support of these types of grants, and the leverage that we can use with some matching grant shows that this is the direction we wish to go as far as safety for our pedestrians, youth, as well as our walkers. And we definitely need street improvements all along that route.
Yes, I agree. But at what, there might be development along there, but it's hard to say when. And there's already some parcels that have homes on them, and so it's really hard to say whether or not development will occur in enough time to connect a sidewalk system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other questions from the council for Tony on grant application?
Seems like a no-brainer. Mayor, I move that we authorize city staff to submit an application for the 2021 Safe Routes Grant.
I second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the city staff to submit an application for the 2021 Safe Routes Grant. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Apologies, 1 second. Apologies. Councilmember Boff,
Yes.
Councilmember Stimmel,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobin,
Yes.
and Councilmember Cerveni.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. And again, Tony, good job. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, the next one I have. Next one I have on the list is another grant application, and this is the STBG rural grant application that's authorized by RTC. And so on April 7th, WashDOT announced a call for projects for what's called the, it's actually, it's a misprint here. It's called the Surface Transportation Block Grant. And this is a federal grant. So there's a lot of criteria that for requirement of this grant. And part of it is it has to be on the regional transportation plan, which this project that we're proposing to be submit for application is the 4th Street widening and Breezy Creek Culvert project. So that is in the regional transportation plan. It's also in our local transportation plan, the capital facilities plan. And it is also a federally classified road. So there's a few classified roads and in La Center. One of them is La Center Road. The other one is Pacific Highway, 4th Street, and I believe Aspen Avenue. They're all federally classified. So they can receive grants for federal funding. So in 2023, SCB rural funding is available in the amount of $1.045 million, and in 2023 and in 2024, $450,000 is available. So there's a total grant opportunity of about $1.495 million in the next 4 years. $1.5 million has already been granted to the city from the state government for design of this project. And PBS Consulting engineers were contracted with the city to design this project, and they anticipate completing the design in June of 2021. PBS, just to go into some background, PBS is considering 2 options for crossing Breezy Creek Culvert. Obviously, that has to be replaced because of the widening of the road. And one of the options is a 24-foot by 12-foot high box culvert. And the second option is actually to construct a bridge across Breezy Creek. So they're working on the 30% design milestone now, but they won't be completed until September of this year with 30% drawings. And so they're going to have a better idea of what the cost is, but they've done a preliminary estimate, and the preliminary estimate ranges from $13.6 million for the culvert option to $14.7 for the bridge option. But both options are considering a roundabout at the intersection of Highland Road and 4th Street. So originally, just to go into background, originally when 4th Street was realigned in Highland, they assumed that there would be a traffic signal there at that intersection. So really, there's not quite enough right-of-way to support a roundabout. So the consultants are looking at these 2 options, and so the costs that are shown here likely will drop in addition to being more certain with their contingency, which is 30%. So what I'm trying to say is these costs are kind of weighted right now because they're looking at the most expensive design options that we have. So the $1.495 million that could be received for this federal grant would pay for part of this. But this project, the 4th Street project, is also in our transportation capital facilities plan, so it's TIF eligible. So TIF funds could be used for it as well. So unfortunately, there is a match requirement for federal funding projects, and it's 13.5%. So that's required of a construction match. So the draft applications are actually due July 10th, and staff is asking for City Council to approve the application of this grant for 2023-2024 year.
Tony, this is Randy. I got a question for you.
Yes.
On that last paragraph, there's a match requirement 13.5%, which on $1.5 million looks like about $200,000. Does that come out of TIF funds or out of general fund?
Well, I think you could use, if I'm not mistaken, you can use TIF dollars for that, for the match. In addition, there are also other grants that we can get, like TIB, and TIB has a matching. They actually have a matching grant that that's available, and I think we've gotten that before for the Timber Road project. You can get a match from TIB, part of the match from it. So there's other options, but I believe we could use the tip dollars for that match.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Tony.
Any other questions? Yes.
And just to throw in here, when federal funds are involved, any state or local dollars are considered local match to a federal grant.
Right. Okay. Very good. Any other questions for Tony this evening on this grant application? Could I get a motion?
Mayor, I move to authorize the city to submit the application. I got something popped up on my screen for the matching 2022-2023 rural grant application.
I second.
I have a motion and second to authorize the city staff to submit an application for the 2023 and 2024 rural grant applications. Again, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Boff,
Yes.
Councilmember Stimmel,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobin,
Yes.
and Councilmember Cerveni.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. And again, Tony, thank you very much. Good job. A lot of work. We have one remaining item on the agenda this evening under new business. And that's for the IGA with the Center School District. And Mr. Matt Jenkins will be presenting to the council this evening for this project.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens. Matt Jenkins, Public Works Manager, City of La Center. Here to discuss the project, the interlocal agreement for the pump station and force main construction with La Center School District. A little background on it. La Center School District submitted an application to build a middle school in August of 2018. On January 24th of 2019, conditions were established for construction of the new school. One of the conditions required of that school district was to construct a pump station and force main to serve the school along with the sewer basin that they reside within. The 2013 general sewer plan established a sewer basin that encompasses the school parcels, properties to the east of the school, in the city, and property to the north of Lockwood Creek Road that is currently in the urban growth boundary. The general sewer plan showed a new pump station to be built at the low point of the basin and connected to pump station 3 with a force main south of Lockwood Creek subdivision. With the recent installation of an 8-inch gravity sewer to serve Heritage Country Estates, the school is able to build a new pump station and connect with the force main to a gravity manhole in Lockwood Creek Road, which negates the connection to lift station 3 and the upgrades that will be needed there. Since the school will have to build the new pump station and force main to serve the entire sewer basin, the school is only responsible to pay for the portion of flow from the basin that they will generate. A design was submitted to the city and found to meet city requirements for a public pump station to be maintained by the city. An IGA was developed to allow the school to be reimbursed for the portion of flow to the pump station that is not attributed to the middle school. The total cost of the pump station on school property and force main within Lockwood Creek Road is $1.1 million. A sewer basin study developed by the school's design consultant determined that the school will contribute 34% of the total flow in the basin. The city will be responsible for reimbursement of 66% of the cost of the pump station and force main. The city staff reviewed and approved the sewer basin report and agreed with the cost shown in the IGA. We will build the pump station and provide the city with an easement on school property to maintain the pump station. The city will reimburse the school district with 66% of the cost within 5 years of substantial completion of the pump station. Attached is a sewer basin map, the IGA, and exhibits B and C referenced in the IGA. Any questions?
Hey, this is Doug here, Matt. One question. Will the SDCs that we collect in that area help to offset this expense?
Yes, excellent question. Actually, we went through that exercise with Paul Lewis. The SDCs will offset the 66%.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Also, one thing of note, since Councilmember Boff spoke up, is that there is in section 1, line 8 of the agreement, it says easterly in reference to the force main. It's actually going to be changed to westerly. It does not impact the terms of the agreement at all, so we will update that and change it.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Matt.
other questions? Go ahead.
You and Tony are comfortable with the design as submitted?
We are. We've been really involved, and they're actually using our integrator as their integrator. So it's been a good partnership. I'm very comfortable with it at this point. I think Tony is as well. They've been very transparent, and it's an exciting project.
Okay, thanks.
Bet.
Any other questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the IGA regarding the lift station.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the intergovernmental agreement with the Center School District. Again, may I have for the commission and force main as presented. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Boff,
Yes.
Councilmember Stimmel,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobin,
Yes.
and Councilmember Cerveni.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. Matt, good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
That concludes our meeting for this evening. Again, I want to thank everybody for all their hard work and got through quite a few projects this evening. So well done. With that, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
The second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
I was thinking.